Hello everyone, it's me, Games99, aka No Brainer. Welcome to a Skytear video. This is not a how to play Skytear. This is a now that I know how to play Skytear, what should I be looking out for on turn 1. If you want to know how to play Skytear, I will have some links in the description below. Artificery, for example, did a video on how to play Skytear. In fact, I was in that video learning how to play Skytear for the first time. So, assuming that you've watched those videos or played Skytear yourself and know the general actions, I plan to cover in this video leadership, the difference between ranged and melee units, how to push effectively, and what you should be looking out for really in the first turn. Right? I don't really know the rest of this game. It's a very complicated game, but I think at this point I've kind of figured out what I want to be looking at in turn 1. And so we're going to start by just briefly going over, once again, what pushing is, what controlling is. So when you are within 3 hexes of a control token, one of these, you are providing a +1 point towards it. Whoever wins the most points gets to push the token up, and very importantly, kill the enemy minions equal to the difference. So if I just move a character in to the control point, then obviously I'm at a +1 advantage. This thing is going to move up 1, and a creep is going to die at the very start of the game. Of course, my opponent is then going to move in that way, and then we're kind of at a stalemate, right? So that's how that goes. What you want to be doing is you want to be applying as much pressure in here as possible. Killing enemy creeps is a good way, of course, of using your attacks actions. So using attack actions to increase the amount of pressure. So for example, if I move Talaki in here and then she shoots at a creep and kills it, she has spent 2 action points to get two action points, I should say. Action points are what you spend to use actions. She has spent 2 action points to gain a +2 bonus, to get a +2 on this token, right, on controlling this lane. But of course, only certain heroes can do that. Talaki, oh my god. I am not going to pronounce these things right. Astrida, oh, that's not even great either. Astrida, because Shalavi. Anyway, one huge difference between these characters, all these characters, that I think, very, very importantly, is ranged versus melee. So Sukoshi is melee, Talaki is ranged. So we're going to see how much we can put onto Sukoshi here versus Talaki. So Sukoshi can move, he can skirmish, and then he can attack a creep, right? He can do 3 actions to get his +2 on this dome. However, a ranged character just has to move, then they can attack, and then they can either worship or lead, which will give you something else. So, for example, a lead from hand with a 3, if I grab myself just a 3, a lead from hand with 3, would give you a +2 and the +3 from the lead, a +5 bonus in this lane, right? So that's one huge difference already between characters. Not even looking at their abilities, just ranged allows you to attack and then lead. Melee does not allow you to attack and then lead with the creeps. Now, saying that, if all you do is move and then lead for a 3, what you are doing is you're now at a +4. In this lane, right? And +4 sounds really, really big, and it kind of is. At a +4, you are going to kill these 2 minions for free. So it's as if your attack didn't matter, right? That's one huge part. Leading is the best way of killing creeps, is the most action-efficient way of killing creeps, but of course it costs a card from your hand. And you're not going to have 3s forever. You're not going to have an infinite hand of 3 costs. But I would recommend in your opening mulligan always trying to find at least 3 costs. Why 3? Because there's 3 control points, and there's the 3 control points, so you might want to be able to lead on any of those 3 control points, or all 3 of those control points even, depending on the objective. But of course, generally I'm also looking to only lead in 2 of these 3 places, because I want to save at least one 3 cost for leading with on the next round, and that's when things start getting, I don't really know about any other rounds. I only know the first round right now, but I know it fairly well. So, a ranged character, to recap, can move, attack, and lead. A melee character cannot do that. And that's pretty huge. Also, in terms of where things are on the board, we've got ourselves the ruler. There we go. We've got ourselves bushes and things. Like, bushes allow us to move the full 3 and then go in here, and then I'm protected from the bush. Very importantly as well are these bushes on the sides. So these bushes will allow us... So what we can do, instead of... Instead of doing the attack, we can move, skirmish over, and then lead. Any character can do this, and this puts them very safely inside their bush over here. And in this bush, in fact, in this general area, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So anywhere in this sort of like general area here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. Anywhere around here, you're not gonna get attacked. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. That needs to go up 1. So anywhere within this general area, you're not going to get attacked by an enemy melee hero. And in this bush, you also can't be attacked by an enemy ranged hero because they can't see inside it, right? That's a very safe play, so you could do that. But the problem is if your opponent then comes in with their ranged character, like Ekrit here, shoots a minion, and then leads themselves, they are now winning the lane by 1 point. I should take off the correct minion. They are now winning by 1 point. And with that 1 point, because both sides would have predictably led with a 3 cost, right? And then with that 1 victory lead, not only are they going to be able to move the control point to be within line of sight of the tower, which means that the tower is going to get hit, but also, very crucially, is going to kill this last minion for free. The aim of the first round, to me, really, is to make sure that your opponent does not kill minions for free via lead actions. That you're forced to swap attacks on each other, so that way, it's a 0, it's a stalemate. Or if they're gonna win the lane, at least force them to kill both creeps, so that way they're not getting their free minion kill when doing so, and then they're spending a card from their hand to not kill a minion. That's, in my opinion, the hugest part. Because if you don't contest a lane at all, they are going to get to just move, lead, and then do whatever they want. They can perhaps, for example, as Sukoshi, he can move, he can skirmish in, shoot someone in the dome, move back out, and lead. And then these 2 creeps both die for nothing. And you want to force your opponent to spend those extra actions like an attack action or a worship action on these creeps. Because whoever makes the most effective actions in a game is most likely to win. Or at least most likely to win ignoring the victory conditions. By the way, before we continue, I am speaking here from an aggro player's perspective. I really like aggro in this game. And so, from an aggro perspective, actions are very, very important. Probably still very important in the control deck as well, but little less so compared to aggro. What you've got to expect is that your opponent can always counter your +3 lead with their own +3. In that way to force these minions to be gone. So, we have 3 control points and 4 heroes. So the classic is going to be splitting 3 ways and then have this 1 extra hero left over to go into whatever they want to go into. Usually going to be going in via these victory conditions here. So now that I've explained the absolute basics of action economy regarding creeps, I am now going to start talking about characters with their own special abilities regarding creep waves and what their effects are. And then we'll analyze them on the basis of this action economy sort of perspective. So we'll start with Tokali. So, okay, let's not start with Tokali. She is... Well, no, let's start with her, even though she's complicated. So Tokali's ability is that she can place a pillar down. So she can... So a classic Tokali turn is going to be moving up, placing down a pillar, and performing a lead action, right? So what this pillar does is it allows her to make her minions immune to damage in exchange for her taking the damage herself. She only has 16 health. She does not reduce that by armor. She is straight up losing that hit point. So if Ekrit comes in here and shoots a minion and deals 2 damage to it, she is losing Takali is losing 2 health. But you can trade out your health for your minion's survivability. And what this is, very importantly, is that now your opponent, if they want to deal with this lane, if they want to stop your Takali getting the free 2 kills on the minions, they're going to have to move in and lead themselves, right? And they can attack, but the attack isn't going to do anything. It's going to do damage to Kali. It's not going to actually do anything in terms of the points, the capture points. And then you can move in another hero quite easily, and now you're winning at a +1. And then that can force the other opponent to bring in their other hero, and so on and so forth. But by protecting your creeps before they get attacked, this can really just stop something. Especially if Takali is paired up with another ranged character, like a Strider, like just being able to kill another creep. Now you're winning at a +2. You're killing this final creep. Your opponent can't do anything because they can't kill your creeps, and their lead is wasted. Which is very important, again, because you want to bleed your opponent dry of leads. So that's Takali. She's very, very powerful, very good at dealing with this sort of thing. Every faction, I should say, has 2 heroes who are good action economy-wise of dealing with this. So Takali spends an action to counter any opponent's actions they would spend on messing around with the creeps. Because, of course, Takali can only move, worship, and then do her thing. Now, another interesting thing, though, about Talot Green is that they can use the pillars other characters place. So Zakol is fantastic with Takali. So what Zakol does is he deals 1+ damage to an enemy adjacent to a pillar when he worships. So you've got your Takali, she's protected the pillar. Your opponent has done stuff, like they've had to bring in a second character on this. Takali's taken some damage, right? Sure, she's gone to like 10 health. But then what you can do is you can move in Zakol, you can punch the enemy, and you can worship, remove the pillar, and the creep's gone. Right? As the very last action, the creeps aren't dying anymore. And suddenly you're winning by a 1+ again. That creep goes away, you've won the action economy again, and you go into push forwards. Alternatively, Zakol can go somewhere else, like he can go into the dome and still manage to worship, destroy the pillar, and now you're even in this lane. But not only are you even in this lane, you're even in this lane and you're pushing up, so now you can have 4 minions on the next round to their 2 minions on the next round. And because you're actually even, you get to place your minions behind the token, the spawn point, and now your Takali's protecting 4 minions worth. Wow, okay. So now you're getting a big push out. Because if nothing happens, if you draw, but you still have minions, that means on the next round, you're going to have more minions than they do. Which means that you're going to win more. On the next round. And that can be very devastating to get a good push up like that. A lot of strong pushes start with the turn 1, you guys just draw, but you draw whilst keeping your minions alive, and Takali can do that for you very nicely. And Zakol can destroy can be anywhere on the map and destroy a minion. So he can always spend an action to do an attack against a minion, provided you've already had another hero set up, which is the strength of Talot. They get other heroes to set up for them. Which is great, because that means he's not forced to walk up, skirmish, and then attack a minion. He can walk somewhere else and still destroy a minion as if he was a ranged character. So that's the Talot way of dealing with things. Not only that, but Talot have some very interesting power cards that you can play turn 1 or turn 2 with the Skytear Flux. But they're all requiring adjacency. Now that's where the Takali as a Zakol plan doesn't really pay out very well, because they're not planning on really being that adjacent to minions. You can't get adjacent to a minion with just a single move action. You can with a skirmish action, though. So that's kind of why the Talot is... that's kind of why these cards aren't necessarily played to deal with minions, but you've got Shield Slam, which is going to do damage to any enemy, so it can do damage to an enemy minion, and kill them. So 1 cost, kill a minion. That's good value, because that is, in the early game at least, that is an action's worth, right? You have spent another action to get a minion kill. You can also Skytear Flux into a riposte, which is the same thing, really. It allows you to do a 1 damage to an adjacent enemy minion. And then you got underground tunnels, which is super interesting, because underground tunnels can allow you to dodge. So like if your Zikol is here, so if you've done something like moved a melee hero up here, god damn it. I hate the control points in TTS right now because the control points kind of suck. There we go. To me, these control points should perhaps have 4 states, and then always have a minion on them. But anyway, so if you've brought a Zikol up here or something, if you brought a melee hero up here and you have killed the 2 creeps, and you've attacked and destroyed this creep, opponent. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna lock this token down because I'm moving it around a lot. So let's lock that token. There we go. Can't move it now. Boom. There we go. Wouldn't want to do that in a real match, but in here, it's just fine. So, you've done Zikol, you've killed a minion, right? The enemy comes in, they're going to do the same, they're going to shoot a minion, right? You can respond with underground tunnels, and what that does is it keeps the minion alive and instead moves them to the other side. So they have spent an action to attack a minion, and they still get what they want, right? They still get the 0, they still get the -1 on this lane, but now you get a +1 on the other lane. Which is in effect you doing the same thing as killing another enemy minion. So, but it's slightly better because now you've stacked 3 minions up. In the case of a draw, you're gonna have an extra minion ahead. Yeah. So now your opponent. So now you've kind of wasted your opponent's action. And that's a really interesting card. I don't play it. It's not a card I'm interested in doing at the moment because again, it has to be adjacent. So that really means you have to have built your deck such that you've got melee. You're in melee with creeps, and that's not something you're gonna do very much. But you know, if you do, these are great for it. These are great for it. You know what? I have been talking about the big pushes, but I haven't been explaining myself all that well. So I'll just take you through a quick example. So you've drawn in this lane, but you've but you managed to kill the opponent's minions. So now you've got 4 minions going up against their 2, right? So now you've already got a +2 before this has begun. So that's the equivalent of doing a move and an attack. Sorry, doing a move, a character in, and then attacking a minion, right? That is a 2 difference. So that is the equivalent of taking 2 actions for free, right? Because you've kept the other 2 minions alive. So Takali, she takes some damage on herself, but she's setting up, right? She's denying the opponent this action, and then on the next round, she's effectively taken 2 extra actions in order to get a +2 on the control point. Ideal for each control point, the standard expected value of an action for a control point turn 1 is going to be a 1. And you want to try and beat that, and lead is the only real lead in these interesting worship actions are the only way of getting more than 1's value out of these more than a +1 value contribution value. You know, I don't have a good term for this. Control value. I'll say control value for now, and then I'll probably change my mind again later. We'll do control value, more than a +1 control value per action point spent. Similarly, if you draw, or even if you lose the lane, but you've managed to kill your opponent's minions, it doesn't really matter that you've lost it so much because your opponent is not getting their lead value out of things. You're not getting your lead value out of it, but your opponent isn't either because they've killed your minions. No, nothing to do with your opponent. Let me rephrase. Sorry, I should have wrote a script before I began. If you lose the tokens, but you have managed to kill your opponent's minions, it doesn't matter so much that you've lost, because your opponent is not going to get any extra benefit no matter how much they've won it by. So if they won by a +1, they're not killing a minion and banking that value until the next turn. They're not doing that. Which is very important, because if you can bank the value to the next turn, then you're effectively taking more actions than your opponent. So that's Talot's way of getting extra value out of their extra value out of their actions, because again, in reality, so you can move, attack, and lead is is 3. If you move and attack but you don't lead, then you've got this extra action line around that you need to get a +1 in somehow, right? Okay, so we'll talk now about blue. Blue is kind of the best, many people say, in terms of dealing with minions, in terms of controlling points, I should say, in their action cards. But we'll talk about these two. So Shalavi is an interesting one because he's the assassin. But the assassin has a way of has their way of dealing with minions, and a strider has their way of dealing with minions. So the way that worship works with blue is that you can activate a character and worship the other character, and that's very strong because you're taking an action point away from this person but giving it to that person. So you can do for your first turn 1, for example, move into the dome, lead because there's no minions in the dome, right? And then worship the other character because that would have otherwise been wasted. That worship action would otherwise been wasted in terms of controlling points. So now now even though Shalavi took effectively 2 actions, a strider is going to be able to take effectively 4 actions because her shapeshift ability is now active. So Shalavi's shapeshift. Otherwise, this is what's going to happen. Shalavi wants to use his shapeshift ability, uses the shapeshift ability, and oh no, she's can't move and then skirmish and attack. Right? She ran out of actions. So the only way for Shalavi turn 1 to actually get her ability off is if someone else worships her. Unlike a strider. So a strider, she can, whenever she kills an enemy minion, she can spawn another one. So she can do a worship. So she can move, worship, and then attack, which kills a enemy minion and spawns one of hers. So she's effectively moved. That's a 1 control point because she's now within the control point. Attack to kill an enemy. That's a -1 to the enemy. So that's a +1 to you. In effect, that's 1. And then spawned a minion. So there you go. That's a +3 advantage. So 3 actions +3. That isn't as good as a person moving and then leading, because moving and leading is a +4. But it's still pretty good. Now, now she does take some HP loss for this. She takes 2 damage. But she has the extra minion. And remember what I said? If you lose, but if you draw, these 3 minions, you can have 5 minions next round against your opponent's 3. So that's still going to be a +2 for the next round, banking for the next round. That's one of the real powers of a strider. That's why she's so strong, is the fact that she gets to really start stacking up these minions until your opponent can't deal with it. Alternatively, you can lose by 1 point. Oh no, you've got a +3 right now. Your opponent moves in and they do their stuff. That's a +4. Does their lead? That's a +4. So now it's 1, 2, and a +3 versus 1, 2, 3, 4. You lose by 1 point. Oh no, you lose 1 minion, but now it's going to be 3 minions versus 4 minions. So you've still got that action left over for the next turn. So that's the strength of a strider right there. If she skirmishes herself, if she shapeshifts herself, she gets a +1 action. She gets a +1 to the token and a +1 going forward for the next round because it's a minion. Alternatively, and this is where a strider is really good, if someone else shapeshifts her, now she's got her 3 actions. She can move, she can attack, she can spawn her minion, she can kill that minion, and then she can lead. And then leading with a +3, your opponent's not going to try and fight that, are they? Maybe, but they'd be kind of suicidal too. And unless they've got a really good character themselves, like a Kuti. And what this means is you now have a +6 advantage, assuming you've led with a +3. Your opponent, if they do the same thing with their lead, that's only a +5, so they're still going to lose this last minion. So a strider, if someone else worships her and she gets to lead, she is getting that extra value from that lead and killing this extra minion. If she uses a 3, she could use a 2 or a 1 and just bluff that she's got a 3, and then your opponent might be like, I'm not going to try and contest that because she's got a +6 right now. But that's part of the game. Bluffing is part of the game. So that means that the other person though has to have spent their action. So Shalavi would have So Shalavi would have spent his action to give her this extra +1 bonus. So in effect, her shapeshift is just a +1 bonus, but it's a +1 bonus and then a +1 going forward, and also you can target it on a specific lane. It's a focused push, very, very strong. And that's why she loses HP for it, whereas other heroes do not. On top of that, Blue has some very interesting control cards, but if you're caring about them round 1, they need to go first. So going first as Blue is pretty strong, because that gets you the Skytear Flux, which is like the coin in Hearthstone. You know, it gives you 1 mana effectively for a non-ultimate spell, which means that you can spend a 2 mana one immediately. So Presence, Call the Pack, and Bewitch. Very interesting cards here. So Presence is an extra +1 and a Predict 2. So it's a +1 to so it's a +1. So it's the 3 actions worth, the equivalent of like killing a minion, but better, because it's better to not kill minions and get your +1, because that means any overkill damage is gonna go over to destroy the enemy minions, right? And if you're winning by 2, you want to kill 2 minions. You want to get maximum value out of that. So that's one thing where Presence is very strong. I mean, if Astrida just does her combo but doesn't lead, she can still play the Presence, and then this is the equivalent of drawing with any hero who walks in and leads. Right, so she is keeping her minions very, very, very safe, very strong. Although Presence is best used in the Dome, because there are no minions for the enemy to deal with. You can put 1 hero in here and Presence and lead, and they can't spend an attack to get a +1 or a worship to get a +1, because worships also affect minions. So all they can really do is put more bodies into that Dome, and more bodies in there means there's not bodies on the sides. Really locks down that Dome. They also have Call the Pack, which can spawn a friendly minion within 3 hexes, if you're within 3 hexes of his control point. And then if you have fewer minions than your opponent, you can spawn another one. So if your opponent starts and they kill your 2 minions, because they can do that, then you can walk in, split the Skytear Flux, Call of the Pack, you've got your minions back there, and then you can lead and kill the enemy minions. And Call of the Pack, played on defense, is the equivalent of a +2. It's the equivalent of 2 actions, which is almost 3 actions. That's almost an extra hero's worth. And then Bewitch, which is a -1 on the damage number there. And you have to be adjacent, like you do with the greens, which can be a bit awkward. But you kill an enemy minion and spawn a friendly minion. And that is less situational than Call the Pack. Call the Pack needs you to be losing the lane. Because you spawn the minion, then it checks. So you need to be 2 down in order to get your thing, and it puts you back up to equal. But Bewitch can kill the enemy minion and spawn an adjacent minion. That's just a +2 right there alone. One thing I should say as well about Presence, it predicts 2, and the idea is that you want to predict something so that there's a +3 on top of the deck, so you can also lead from the deck rather than from your hand. So your hand size of 6, you can protect a little bit, and you can spend those other 3 costs on other turns going forward. All these very, very, very strong, but all are 2 cost. So if you want to be winning the lane turn 1, you need to be Skytear. You need to own the Skytear Flux to get these going. Also, Trample is just interesting. So the idea is, if this is a way of punishing your opponent if they have no minions. So if you've if you've killed the enemy minions with 2 characters or whatever, and you have your 3 going on, and they don't try and contest this lane, you can play Trample and move the token up, and suddenly you're killing the enemy tower. Outside of that cheese, you don't do anything with it, really. It's really not a good card outside of the cheese. But the cheese is real, and it is a very aggro way of playing Blue, and can lead to an entire tower topple turn 1. And of course, every time you hit a tower, you also get 1 card draw, which can be very important for replenishing those 3s from your hand. Let's move on to the others. Let's flip to the other side of the board here now. Let's go with yellow. Nupton, So, yellow have 2 heroes. We'll go with Akuti first. He is a bit simpler. So Akuti can spend his worship in order to spawn an illusion. And then when he makes an attack, she can also have the illusion deal an attack to an adjacent enemy minion. So an illusion can always be spawned 3 places away from you. Ignoring line of sight, by the way. So that's interesting. And then you can attack, kill a minion, and kill the other minion. And now you've got that +3 in the same way as a Strider. But whereas a Strider spawned another minion, Akuti just killed 2 minions. So a Strider's push is a little stronger, but with those 2 minions killed, you don't have to worry necessarily about leading in this lane. Because if they lead and they kill it, oh no, worst comes to worst, both sides lose their minions. It pushes up a bit, but they don't have any extra minions going forward into the next round. You're not on that action economy disadvantage going into the next round. However, another very interesting thing about Akuti, not only does the illusion not require you to be in line of sight when you're placing it because it is a move, so you can be in here and you can go 1, 2, 3, and then attack someone inside the dome, and then you can attack the minion. But also, one big weakness of a Strider is that her shapeshift has to be refreshed every turn if you want to keep using that ability. For Akuti, if you're planning on losing, right, if you're planning on not leading in this lane, you can move in, you can kill the 2 minions, and place your illusion here. And then if you lose by just 1, if your opponent walks in, leads, and doesn't kill a minion, I guess, or if they kill a minion but then you bring another hero in and you don't lead, you just use it to attack. The control point will move 1, and your illusion is still in range to do the same thing next round, and you don't have to spend the worship on it. So this illusion is 1 action point plus 1 action point going forward, like a Strider's is 1 action point going forward because she spawns a minion, but only if the control point doesn't really move. Similarly, if you think you're going to win the lane, you can put the token up here, and then when you win, you can move it 1, or you can win by 1 or 2, or even you can go 3 here, and then force the opponent to spawn their minion here, I guess. Ideally, if you have a hero over here, that would be amazing and block this. Maybe if you win the outsider, you can... No, you can't do that. But, you know, you can move up here and then force the opponent, and then still have Akuti in range. If you lose or win with Akuti, but by small numbers, then you'll... But win or lose by small numbers, then your worship does not have to be replaced, and you have that +1 extra going forward. On top of that, of course, you always get the +1 armor as well, which is nice. But that just brings them up to level with stuff like a Strider. But I really like using Akuti in my aggro list to kill minions, and then just start going Wargies on the following turns, and start attacking in other lanes, and you'll still get the value from this illusion. Now, Ekrit. Ekrit is a big flavor from a lot of people, actually. So Ekrits, first they have to be on the in the front row, not the back row, in order to reach this. But Ekrits get to attack in a line. So the standard approach for an Ekrit player is to move here, or if they're on the other side, move to here. Place her illusion over to here, and then attack in that line. So you see that line and how it goes out 4 spaces? You have to shoot the illusion to do it, but you're going to be going all the way out to here and killing those minions. So what has happened, in effect, is you have killed 2 enemy minions, like Akuti would with an attack action. You have spent your 3 action points, like Akuti would have with their attack action. You've gained a +3, like Akuti would have with their attack action, or other characters would have. But your 3rd point is actually inside the dome. So now you're challenging the dome, and if your opponent comes in, attacks, and leads, then you can come in and lead as well. And then your opponent has to come in with his 2 characters. So you can force that spare floating hero of your opponent's into the dome. However, you will still perhaps need to move a hero over here, and your opponent can move up here and do their lead. which can force you to also still move a hero in here and either lead or do a damage or start attacking and accept you're going to lose by 1. But if you accept you're going to... So, you know, if your opponent moves in here and leads... So in a typical Ekrit game, right, you've got something like this is going on, right? Where they've got 2 heroes in the dome, and each one has a lead going on to counteract each other's leads. And then you've got your attack. And then your opponent can lead here. And you can choose not to lead here. And then they'll win by 1, so they'll push the token back by 1. Because you have a... No, they'll win by 2, sorry. They'll win by 2 because of the Astrida. Because the Astrida counts as 1. They've got a 4 hit. No. They've got a... Ignore my maths. My maths are bad. So another reason why I want to do this video is because I'm actually really, really bad at the token math. So this helps square it out in my head. Astrida moves in here and leads. They're leading. They now have a 4. You're not leading. You have a 3. You spent the time attacking Astrida instead, lowering her health. Which is investing for future turns, right? Because in future turns, she'll eventually die, and then your opponent loses 3 whole actions worth. So she's got a 4 to your 3. She's only killing 1 minion, right? And pushing you back. And then when the next minion spawn, you've got 3 minions to their 2 minions. And that means that Ekrit has effectively also done a +1 going forward. Or to be more precise, your move 1 on another hero is giving you a +1 going forward. Of course, you could also decide to lead, and you can lead with like a 2 or a 1 at this point. You don't have to lead with a 3. You can save your 3s for the future and just lead with the +1 or +2 to ensure that there's a draw or a slight victory in your favor and keep your minions alive. And then you've got a +2 going forward, right? So not having to lead with Ekrit is... So having Ekrit spread out her... go early, spread out her control into multiple lanes... force your opponent to move into the dome with 2 characters, and then you can move a hero in here and lead with a smaller card. Makes her very strong and very heavily picked right now. Most heroes have to be in the lane to actually deal with it, and she doesn't. And if you decide specifically to lead with a 1, that means the token doesn't move. That means she's always going to be able to shoot she's going to be able to shoot and kill this minion again. But of course, your opponent's going to spawn another minion over here. So at that point, you're only doing a 1. But you're spending 1 action to kill 1 minion. That's a fair trade, right? That's a 1-for-1. As we said, you're wanting to get 1-for-1s or higher. So that's Ekrit. And she forces a lot out of your opponent. She really does. Makes it difficult to deal with her. Also, they have some slight interesting cards. So Tetsudo is like an anti one of these of what we're talking about. So Tetsudo is blocking your HP but killing a friendly minion instead. Not very useful round 1 because your opponent's not going to hit you very hard most likely in round 1. But they could do. And having the minion lose the HP instead turns it into them gaining a +1 control. But if you know you're winning that lane already, it doesn't really matter, right? So hard. I mean, that's a +1 going forward that you're losing, I guess, because it's a minion that you're losing. But I guess if your opponent is planning on killing the minion anyway, then it's also less valuable. Then this is more valuable. But you're trading control for health, which is generally worse than trading health for control. They also have fast. Blue actually has fast as well, but I forgot to point out Blue's. Blue has a 1-cost fast. Yeah, that's important. Because a fast allows Shalavi to get over to here with a move action. They get to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and shapeshift, and then do their attacks and kill both minions. And in the exact same way, fast allows skirmish characters, allows melee characters to move and then attack and then lead. Whereas most other characters in this game, all of the melee characters really need to move, skirmish, attack, or move, lead, and not attack the minion. So this is effectively like a +1 for melee only. Yeah, you can think of it as a +1 for melee only, because melees inherently have a -1 to the control point value because they can't attack a minion. Outside of that, yellow has a lot of 3-cost kill minions, AoE kill minions. In a similar vein to Dragon Punch over here. They can kill minions in an AoE, but that's 3-cost stuff. I guess they technically have Hurricane Strike, but that requires you to move 4 and stuff. And that's 2-cost. I guess that could work with... I guess Hurricane Strike should have been here. So Hurricane Strike is a move... if you have moved 4 or more tiles, deal 2 damage to 2 enemies adjacent to you. So you could, with a melee hero, move the 5 and then kill 2 minions. I guess. But again, that's effectively just a +1 for melee heroes. Alright, and finally, we're going to go with... Kurumo, red. Kurumo, they're my favorite. They're the ones I'm playing at the moment the most. And unfortunately, they're not very good at pushing. So, at least for turn 1. Their turn 1 is very weak. So they have Yami. Yami's super interesting. So her way of killing minions is not through her worshipping, but through her movement. First time Yami moves through an enemy minion, deal 1+ damage to it. So if she is here... she can do a move to wherever she wants to be, and also kill the minion she moved through, right? Because she made a movement like this. Which is very highly valuable if you are wanting to make a move anyway, right? Or alternatively, you can be attacking the enemy, you can do an attack action, and then still move and kill a creep. You can, like... so if there's an enemy here, you can do an attack, and then still go move and kill the creep. But this move is not something you can really do turn 1. So you need to move over a creep, right? So I'm going to skirmish, and then I'm going to move, and I can't move over a creep because I have to end. I can't end my space on top of a creep. I have to move through them, right? It's like I'm doing a swoosh stab, you know. So what can I do with Yami then? Well, if I use one of these fast cards from yellow, because Yami herself is red-yellow, she can cast yellow spells, then she can skirmish, and then move, which kills the minion, and then do an attack. And then that's the equivalent of her being a ranged character. Hooray! Alternatively, if an opponent has been very aggressive and they've moved a hero all the way over to here, you can still Shadow the Reaper. So you would mark the enemy to allow you to teleport over to here, and then you can do your attack and move. And then you're the equivalent of a ranged character who has done their worship thing, right? Equivalent of a good ranged character. But note that you're not leading with those. You can't kill both minions and lead. Only a Strider can kill both minions and lead. There's also Sukoshi. Now, Sukoshi is a disappointment. So, if the enemy is adjacent to a minion, he can move up and he can mark. And the mark is the equivalent of doing an attack, right? So he can kill that minion. So not only is he marking, but he's also killing a minion. That's incredibly good value. And if he's moved over here, he can then attack the other minion and kill it. And he's done the equivalent of a He's done the equivalent of a good ranged character, like a Kudi, like a Strider. He's done the equivalent of a good ranged character's push. Problem is, your opponent knows you're playing Sukoshi. So how often is your opponent going to move one of their heroes next to an enemy minion on round 1? It's not going to happen. Just don't expect this to happen at all. Your opponent has to do some very questionable plays for this to ever go off round 1. Later on, it can work, but Sukoshi is just not a good pusher, in my opinion. Sukoshi is just not a good pusher. However, Sukoshi does have a cool ultimate, Shuriken Storm. And this ultimate is well worth mentioning, because Shuriken Storm allows you to kill all enemy minions within 3 of you, if you can see them. Because it allows you to hit all enemy minions in line of sight. So this is Super Dragon Punch. So if Sukoshi's over here, Zakol's over here or something, he can attack Zakol and still kill 2 minions. That's really good value for pushing. But it's an ultimate. Like, how often are you going to actually get an ultimate? The likelihood, I want to say, of drawing an ultimate in this game is, well, unless you're hard mulliganing for it, it is 12 in 32, right? Ish. It's 12 1 in 32s. Well, 1 in 32, 1 in 31, 1 in 30. You know how it is, right? You should know your probabilities. But it's not very likely. It's still less than 50%. Okay, so it's not that likely that you're going to actually get this out, but if you do, it's a really good push ability. So that's all the heroes that can really do some good pushing. So we're going to just do a very quick demo of round a round 1 with like an all push team. So if I just want to swap these two over, so you could do an Ekrit, right, and then Ekrit kills 2 minions. So you know what? Let's start from the other side because they've got the flux. Let's assume blue has the flux and they're strong. All right. So doing proper stuff, right? You're gonna have you're gonna start. You're gonna have Takali. She's gonna move in. She's gonna place a pillar here to defend these minions, and then she's gonna lead. Place down a 3. You know, there's a Dragon Punch. That's a 3. That's a lead. That's great. Oh, I already had a Dragon Punch here. Of course I did. So she's gonna lead in this lane. My opponent's gonna do their thing with Ekrit because they don't want. That's another thing with Takali, by the way. If your opponent doesn't start killing minions, you can have your other green hero move over and place another pillar. And then when she's in line, and then that means she can protect both lanes at once, and she's going to take a lot of damage for it, but that's a super push right there if you're protecting both lanes. Oh, so much value. So an Ekrit player would typically perhaps do something like this. They're going to move in, they're going to do the illusion, they're going to shoot, they're going to kill 2 minions. Right, so now they're winning at a +2 here. Weakness of Ekrit, though, is you're skirmishing in. Right? You're within skirmish range now of your opponent, so you're going to lose some health on Ekrit for this. In a similar way to you're going to lose some health on Takali. But you've got armor, you've got that 1 armor, so Shalavi's going to skirmish in, he's going to hit Ekrit. It's not going to do anything, or it's going to do like 1 damage because of the armor. And then he can either attack Ekrit, but because we're talking all about pushing, we're going to assume that there's some super pushing. There's left breach and right breach down here, you know. Oh, God. We are team push right here. So he's going to... and then he's going to worship on a Strider. So now it's the opponent's turn. Now... this guy has gone second. Now, going second is actually very interesting. I haven't talked about this. I should have talked about this at the start of the video. Going second means that your opponent kind of has to preemptively commit to things. So, watch this. So, you're now in a situation. There's that pillar. That's an annoying pillar. So I'm going to move with the Kuti, and I'm going to create a illusion. Now, one very interesting thing about Kuti is he can counter something like Takali because he can attack the pillar. And that resolves an attack action which allows you to kill the minion. So you'd kill the pillar and then you kill the minion. And that suddenly puts you in the lead in this lane. And that's very, very strong. But I'm going to assume I do something else. And I just do 2 attacks on these minions. And Takali goes down to like 11 health. And then I lead. So Akuti is leading. Takali is leading with a 3 and a 3. So now this lane is still even, and Takali's just lost some health for it, right? But now it's this guy's turn, so he is going to do his Strider thing, going to move a Strider in, going to shoot a creep, and kill it, and spawn his own. Boom. Take 2 damage for doing so. And now this lane, once again, is now in the lead of a Strider. Because she's actually in this lane, and my opponent isn't. And then a Strider can choose whether to lead in this lane or not. if she doesn't lead in this lane, if she leads in this lane, you kind of... So what's happening here is if you lead in this lane, you are forcing your opponent to respond with their own movement and lead. And so it's a question if you can afford it. Do you have enough 3 costs in your hand? But by forcing it as well, that means that your Shalavi is not going to get absolutely destroyed. And that means that you have a chance of drawing with the dome. Because if you don't lead here, your opponent can very easily just be like, alright, I'm going to move Sukoshi, I'm going to skirmish, hit Shalavi. Now, what they do is they'd move in Yami attack, and then later on they can do Sukoshi things. And end up just standing here, and then it's even. Or alternatively, if they lead themselves, like they move in, they do a skirmish or whatever, and then they lead, they're killing this minion and also pushing the point. And you don't want that to happen. You do not want your opponent to kill minions with lead actions. Although in this case, I mean, what's the difference between lead and attack, right? So Strider's going to lead. She's going to lead herself. There's going to be the... Oops, I pressed spacebar. There is going to be the other 3 cost. And then my opponent is going to be like, well, do I actually want to lead in here? Or do I want to just let this creep fall? But it's left breach and right breach. That's kind of scary. But what they can do is they can move in Yami. They can mark Shalavi, attack, do some damage, bring Shalavi down to like 16 health. But then... So here's the thing, right? Because I am going second, my opponent's going first. If I move Yami... Well, actually, if I move Yami into the dome... what's happening here is that if I don't lead, my opponent can move into the dome without leading themselves. Which means that Zakol could do an attack. And then could do a skirmish attack and then worship. And then they've effectively done an extra skirmish worth of damage to you. That's some action economy right there. So what the Zakol is going to do then... So since you know that your Zakol is going to do this, could do this and get their action economy's worth, if you lead, you're forcing the opponent to decide whether or not they want to actually take this dome. Because now you're winning by enough. And then your opponent can be like, well, either I match the leads and we draw, and I've already used all 3 heroes that are blue, so I can't do my Bewitched Presence, Call the Pack, or anything like that. Whoops, well, whatever. See, this is how I still need to learn. So what Zakol can do here is he can skirmish in, worship to remove this pillar, kill an enemy minion, like that. But then he's stuck. And then lead. And he's got the center, and he's also done a +1 here. But leading will prevent him from doing... Leading will forcing him to lead, so he can't do the attack. But, you know, so Yami's going to lead. So that's exactly what Zakol's going to do. He is going to have to move in, worship to get rid of this creep, and then he can spawn his own thing in here, and then lead. Right. So now, you're winning this lane by 1 point. But this is the end of all of your actions. And this means that player 2, who still hasn't activated Sukoshi, mind you, because Ekrit allowed him to, right? Ekrit moved into the dome and still did her stuff. Sukoshi has free reign of things. He can move into lane 1, kill the creep, and start pushing down for the breach. Well, he'd have to lead to do that. Or he can, like, skirmish, move over to here, kill a creep, and then he's winning by +1, and this creep goes away. Right, which is also very nice and strong and effective. The Akudi Illusion should really have been, like, here. And he does want to win this lane because the Akudi Illusion's in this lane, so he would get to move the illusion up, and then the Akudi Illusion is still within range. So that's a +1 going forward. Or he can move into the dome and do some damage to a Shalavi or a Zakol and do some worshipping stuff, right? And my opponent now has not got well, green and blue now do not have a pillar next to their creeps, so they're going to have to spend that extra worship action placing another pillar down later on. And you would win the dome. But if you win this dome, you are losing lane 2 and lane 1. So player 2 here is losing, but is losing one thing guaranteed, one lane guaranteed, and they are losing the dome. This is the power of not having. This is the power of having red, right? Red has this weakness; they can't then worship and kill off this minion or whatever, and then lead. Like they're losing a hero's worth of this. And this is why you attack the pillar and you force it to be equal. So, the Sukoshi here is going to skirmish in, shoot a Shalavi, because this is the other thing, right? Player 2 here is getting some good damage in. Not only can they put the damage where they want to go, but they can also get some good damage in. Force their opponent to react, so now they've got this one extra turn, and now that he can move. And now it's even. And now it's even, and now he can shoot that creep, right? And so second player has effectively managed to do 2 leads to 3, but the 3 has forced. Well, let's resolve this, right? So this guy's gone 3 leads, and in lane 1 he wins by 3 points. So he pushes the control token up, and he kills this creep. So what's effectively happened is now it is 2 to 3, so now is going a +1 going forward. In lane 2, Takali went with a 3, but so did Akudi, and that Sukoshi gives it a +1. So in lane 2, this creep goes away, this token moves down here, and now we have a +2 going forward, because the Akudi illusion can always kill this creep. And you've got the 1 extra creep, so you're winning in this lane. And then in the center, nothing happens because both players led with a 3. And that is kind of the power of things, right? Because are you okay with... That's the power of going second, because sure, you've... Sure, down here, right, you're right up against the dome, right adjacent. But there's not much difference between being adjacent and being just one tile above the middle line here, right? Because being one tile above the middle line gets you to start hitting towers as spillover damage after creeps. Going adjacent doesn't really do much more, other than push the creeps further away from your own characters. Because I'm closer with Ekrit and Yami than he is with the Striders, Shalavi and Zakol. But at the same time, he can move 3 guys in here, I can only move 2, because I moved Sukoshi over to the right-hand side. But then lane 2 also has an extra +1 going forward, right? It's got a slightly stronger push than what the turn 1 player did, right? Now, to counter this, player 1 has the Skytear Flux. This was all known. All this stuff was known through playtesting and through player 2. Player 2 going second is always a strong advantage because they can always get these extra +1s. The result of this entire map is that this has gone adjacent, whereas this has only gone 1 forward. However, we have 1 action point's worth of extra pushing in this lane. So we have effectively taken 1 extra action, and on top of that, we have dealt more damage to Shalavi than my opponent has dealt to my characters. Because Ekrit had an armor, and Yami could move in, attack, and then lead, which forced Zakol, and Zakol had to do his worship action to pop the pillar. He decided to at least do his worship action and pop the pillar, and he had to lead himself. An attack is worth more than a skirmish. So my opponent has skirmished twice against me, but I've done an attack, and an attack is more valuable than skirmishing when you have armor. When you don't have armor, skirmish is pretty valuable. So yeah, that's a turn 1. That is a typical classic turn 1. One hero in each lane. If you're going first, if you go in second, wait to see what your put one guy to each lane and then see what your opponent's going to do, and then see which lane of yours can get you that extra +1 action points worth of value going into the next round. And if you're player 1, hopefully you've got something to use the Skytear Flux with, because if you had Skytear Fluxed and presenced on the Takali earlier, you would not be in this position. You would have still been even. You would have been drawing. Or you could have presenced inside the dome, and then you would be winning in the dome even when your opponent does their lead. You would have done the presence inside the dome and done the lead with Zakol, and you would have countered this sort of play. So yeah, I hope this entire video has been educational, at least somewhat. This did end up being a bit of a mad ramble to me, but I hope you've understood the core concepts of ranged heroes can do 3 actions and get 3 control tokens worth of value, usually, if they have a worship. Well, no, they can get 5's worth because they lead, right? They get the movement, they get the attack, and then they get the lead, so that's 5's worth. Whereas a melee hero does not get to attack or lead, they only get to do one or the other, so they have a +4, they have a +4 instead of a +5, they have that inherent disadvantage. I hope you understand how the action points kind of work with all these other characters. Like, most characters are going to do a 1-for-1. Zakol is a 1-for-1, but he can do it anywhere on the board that you've already got set up with. Sukoshi is a 1-for-1, but it also marks the enemy, which can do mark effects, right? Akudi is a 1-for-1, but he might be doing that +1 forward, and Strider is same, is a 1-for-1, but she's doing that +1 forward, and it is a creep that she is spawning. She is getting that extra 1 from a creep spawn rather than an opponent loss, which means that she can bank her victory harder, because that means that the opponent has a creep to kill still, because you've only killed one creep, not both creeps. So she can have a +2. Effectively for the next round. +1 for killing the creep and 1 for keeping your creep alive. So yeah, Akudi always gets that +2. Always gets that +1, sorry, from his thing, but then if it's in the correct place, he gets another +1. Whereas a Strider, so long as she is winning the lane, she gets that +1 going forward. And she gets to bank the damage. And that's why those two are both so very strong in push decks. And also Ekrit is able to shoot whilst inside the dome to force your opponent to commit 2 characters to the dome. Rather than this awkward situation where you take left lane, he takes right lane, or you take left lane and then he takes the dome, or whatever. By forcing, you can force them into the dome. So that's been me, GameSite99, aka No Brainer. Thank you for watching. Signing out.